Hello and welcome to the Purple Portal with your host, the somewhat reluctant mystic, Elaine Bartlett. Last week we were speaking about the different energies that were spewed out to raise our consciousness, and these energies were created by a lunar eclipse and a solar eclipse and a retrograde Mercury. Well, we're still in that cycle of retrograde Mercury. And for those of you who have not a clue what I'm talking about with a retrograde Mercury, it has to do with the planet Mercury itself. And it would appear that when it's retrograde, it's going backwards. But it's actually not. It's actually almost, if you will, a smoke and mirrors trick that happens in the heavens. However, in the position that it takes in the heavens, energy is deflected to Earth, as all of the planets do, which I can't quite understand where people ever come to the point of thinking that the planets have nothing to do with their life. They are energy, and they're massive, massive balls of energy, kind of like you and me. Hopefully we're not quite that big, but you get the point. So Mercury is the planet that we attribute, as astrologers, we attribute things like the conscious mind, your thinking, your ability to be focused and clear and present. So when it appears to go backward, and it's a 3-week deal, if you will, it's a 3-week situation, here's what happens. Your airline tickets stand to get mixed up. If you turn left, it should be you turned right. You want to really dot the I's, cross the T's, and be very alert and conscious in a time where this Mercury is moving in a slightly different modality. That being said, most people are terrified of a retrograde Mercury because they've been accustomed to the fact that things get a little scrambled and bamboozled. On the upside, a retrograde Mercury actually brings you into more of a consciousness of what needs to be adjusted from the old. So old personalities from within yourself could surface to be adjusted. You know, that Jekyll and Hyde that hides within inside of you. Well, pull up those characters and adjust them. You could also, though, come across someone from your past, which is always very interesting. You get a love letter finds you that was misplaced for 30 years. I started this radio show in a retrograde Mercury. Well, I'm very happy with my choice to start then, because in my own natural birth chart, I was born with a retrograde Mercury. So none of this is new. The gentleman that owns the station, I had to have known him somewhere, because it's a repeat of old business coming now to the next level of completion, the next level of expansion. So look between now and the 22nd to see who's coming into your life. What the heck are they doing in there? I've come into your life during this portion. And who the heck am I? Obviously, I'm an old connection. I'm an old information bringer for you. A bringer of news, a bringer of light, a bringer of contemplation, a bringer of thought, and hopefully a bringer of thought provocation. I'd like to poke around that brain of yours sometimes and get you up and running. So my background in all of this, what gives me the ability to come here, at least in my mind, is the fact that I've been a student, teacher, and teacher-student, a light seeker, a light giver, a love seeker, a love giver, since the early 1970s. Some of you weren't even born then. And the journey was an interesting one because I was very reluctant to go on the journey. At the time, I was very devout in the religion that I was born unto. And the religion actually excommunicated, that was the word, excommunicated you if you were an astrologer. Well, once I faced that fear and did a little more research, it didn't take much digging to get to understand that, well, isn't this interesting? The three wise men just so happen to have been world-class, top-of-the-line astrologers. So I have come along a line of, let me get more information, let me get it, let me give it. And in the process, have learned and embodied many tools that would make it appear sometimes that I'm a darn good rainmaker, miracle maker, when in truth, none of it's a miracle. It's how it actually should be. And it's just based on the fact that, for the most part, we no longer can identify the laws of the universe, how they operate, how they live and breathe, and have room in your life and mine. So much has happened in my world that allows me to bring information to you, and I am delighted to do so. One of the things that I had begun to talk about last time, because we're in this Pluto also, Pluto is another planet that's going direct at the end of this month. And Pluto is going to bring some upheaval. And upheaval could be as simple as every belief system that you ever thought about no longer works for you. Your entire wardrobe doesn't work for you. You pick yourself up and move to another state, another town, another country. This is all upheaval. I suspect it will be both personal and global. What you want to do in the midst of upheaval, it's kind of like a hurricane. You become the eye of the storm. The eye of the storm is silent. It is powerful. It doesn't have an opinion. It stays out of criticism, and it has no judgment. Judgment's such an interesting thing. Most of us are very sort of finicky with, not me, I'm not judgmental. I suspect you could take another look because it's so subtle and it's so insidious. We hold judgment about almost anything and everything and anyone and everyone. And I'll tell you recently where judgment came into my consciousness, and I had to do a big course correction, which is exactly what the eclipses help you do. You make a course correction. I realized I was holding judgment about our government, about political players in the government, and I was holding judgment against big banking industry. And as I looked at that, naturally, and really looked deeply, I looked very deeply. I don't just give something a cursory look and then dismiss it and go on. No, I contemplate, I look, I mull, I think about it, I meditate, I cogitate, I'll take a walk along the ocean, and it could go on for days. And all of a sudden, then information starts flooding in because my guides and teachers will try to assist me because they understand the sincerity of heart that I want to make a course correction. So they're going to help. So what they did was they actually allowed me to see and understand the role and the importance of the role that all these kinds of players have in life and have had. And once you understand that that was their job, that's their role, there's really no more judgment because that was their sole contract. And indeed, they had been well hated. You know, you look at both of our choices for presidency, you can look at either side. They're both equally hated. And that's a lot of hatred for a soul to try to understand and accept, because they're feeling it. They don't know who to trust. They don't know who's sincere. I don't think any normal person would want to be, any thinking person, any conscious person would want to be in their shoes, which is why the choices are as they are. Because consciousness means you're aware of the oneness. You're aware of the fact that I can't hurt you. You're one with me. Hurt you, that's the least of it. I can't kill you. I can't rape you. I can't steal from you because you are the other me. That's the consciousness that we're all wanting. We're wanting that kind of leadership. But you can't get what you are not. And only when there is a majority will you have the leadership that you're believing that you want. Only then can people of depth and actually spirituality, consciousness is spirituality. It's the true spirituality. They've woken up. They know who they are. They know why they can't hurt you. They know that if they hurt you, they've just hurt themselves. And unfortunately, they know that, well, maybe if I hurt you, I'll get away with, I won't get hurt because somebody's got my back and I'm protected. Yeah, and then their most favorite beloved child comes down with an incurable disease. That's how it works. And so nobody's getting away with anything. You're not getting away with anything. I'm not getting away with anything. We only have come here to put the effort in to remember. The remembering of who you are. But to do that, I think we've got to look at some of the wounds that you and I are carrying. They're actually in our DNA. They are encoded in our DNA. They're actually called the 6 core wounds of humanity. And this material, it resonates to a whole magnificent body of work that was brought forth onto the planet to help us at this time by a gentleman who's in England whose name is Richard Rudd, R-U-D-D. And Richard was gifted to be able to bring forth something, a body of work, which is called the Gene Keys. And as the weeks go on, I'm going to talk much more in depth about these gene keys because as gene being G-E-N-E, your genes. And the contention of this material is we have the power to change our genes, and it's so revolutionary, and yet at the same breath, it is absolutely ancient, and it's what all of the great teachers and healers upon the earth absolutely knew and stood in. Yeshua knew it. Some of you insist on calling him Jesus, which is a slur of his word. He's Yeshua. The Buddha knew it. Krishna knew it. The great ancient teachers of all time knew it. And they operated it, and that's what their miracles were. They were operating from a higher frequency that allowed them to stand truthfully with a corrected gene pattern. So the 6 core wounds are repression, denial, shame, rejection,